these giant black armored trucks that say Homeland Security, but police departments are getting them too, these big modern war wagons. And, I mean, all over the country, you heard the St. Louis police officers on. It was in the news of giant wheeled tanks driving around and even going in people's houses. I've got footage of where they've done urban warfare drills and set up real checkpoints. I mean, that's been in the news in Tennessee, you name it, just a few years ago. So, yeah, they're getting us ready for this. What was your other point, sir?
I think that they run drills where I live as well, because I actually can see them from Fort Bliss, just running certain drills. I don't know what exactly they're doing, but they're getting prepared like crazy, like really hardcore. Like they're really. All I got to say is, like, when I was in the military, I mean, the thing is that these young kids, they're just going to do what they're told, Alex. They're just going to bust through the door and they're just going to shoot people. Well,
that's why they have, I mean, the military invented shoot-'em-up video games. The games like Doom are to create instinctive shooting, get some, as they call it. And, yeah, that's what's going to happen. And the Civil War will start and the bankers will sit back and laugh about it.
What if this false flag is even more obvious? Like for example, with the James Holmes incident, I noticed something. I have a side-by-side photo of James Holmes and the guy in court on my website, and it looks shockingly different. I mean, to the point where even the nose has changed.
Well, listen, I mean, look, the big tip-off is the underwear bomber was drugged up, so is Holmes. Holmes can't even talk. Okay, I mean, it's simple. They go shoot up a building, doesn't matter what people see, you bring in a drugged-up patsy. Because mind control's hard to run. I mean, you can get, like, Sirhan was drugged out, but they pinned his arm, he shot the gun against the wall, the cops said, no, the guy behind him shot RFK. I mean, that's in the police reports, but the media just said, no, it was Sirhan. So a lot of times now, they don't even have the drugged-up mind control guy do the shooting. You have a foreign black op team do it, you have the drugged-up idiot waiting in the parking lot. That's just how they do it. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up in about 5 minutes, we're going to be talking to Dr. Steve Pieczenik. We're going to be breaking down talk of him being the running mate of the Republican presumptive nominee, Mitt Romney. We're also going to get into the staged bin Laden supposed killing. That is all coming up. But right now, let's take a few calls in this short little segment. Let's go to Karen in Arizona.
Hi, Alex. I would like to let you know about an environmental and sustainability summit coming to Prescott on the 16th and 17th of August.
And they should call it Land-Grabbing Enslavement Conference, or turning Prescott into a giant control-freak prison being henpecked by bureaucrats. But I guess they're not calling it that.
It's by Arizona Manufacturing Council and Arizona businesses advancing sustainability. And if we can get as many info warriors from Arizona to come to this conference, the main conference is going to be on the 17th. And isn't it interesting, the ADEQ is Henry Darwin. Isn't that a similarity of interesting of names? The panelists Henry Darwin and Cabrera Massey, Adina Stone. But is there a chance that we can get a call out to many of the info warriors to come? And
yes, I mean, people who love liberty should constantly be watching everything in their area and going out and confronting globalists at every event they can. And they'll run like the roaches they are. Thank you for the call. Again, we're going to break here in a moment. Dr. Steve Pieczenik coming up with huge news after this break. We've got him on hold because some stations don't carry this segment, and I don't want anybody to miss the info. Let's talk to Rob in Washington. Rob, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Alex, I just want to say God bless you. I know you don't like to hear all that stuff, but, hey, man, I love you to death anyways. But I just wanted to bring up the Obamacare makes RFID chips mandatory March 23rd, 2013.
Well, what it says is it'll make insurance pay for it.
Okay.
And they're putting chips in the pills now and a bunch of stuff. But it does move into government-run, medicalized tyranny. It does have these panels, these death panels. They admit they're not, oh, you're above 65, you don't get eye surgery. I mean, it's the hellish system they have in Canada, the hellish system they have in England.
Well, from what I read on this discussion, or like the breakdown of it being a class 2 device, that they're talking about implanting that microchip in people. And I'm thinking the mark of the beast, Revelations.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, there are moves everywhere to make Alzheimer's patients, prisoners, you name it, take them. People, we were at a swim meet with our children a month ago, and some father's like, yeah, I guarantee when they come out with chips, I'm putting them in my daughter. I don't want to have to watch her, as if that's going to make you safe. All of this stuff has back doors built into it for tyranny.
Well, I'm just wondering how they're going to try to force you to take it, because biblically it says that if you take the mark, you're separating yourself from God. I know this isn't a Christian show all the way, but my concerns are what do you mean it's not a Christian
show? I appreciate your call, sir. Listen, it isn't about whether it's a Christian show. Most of the shows you hear on the radio that are on religious stations are worshiping world government, worshiping tyranny, Romans 13, Hitler's favorite Bible verse, do what the government says, all of this stuff, the founding fathers are bad type stuff, okay? This is a radio analysis, commentary, rant, guest transmission. So it's not like you can't call in and read Bible verses if you don't want to. But then it hits a stickler with me when people are like, ooh, I mentioned a Bible thing. Ooh, that's not okay. Because that's not what we're talking about here. Dr. Steve Pieczenik coming up. For the balance of the hour, the next 52 minutes, Dr. Steve Pieczenik, MD, PhD, is going to be our guest. He was the head of psychological operations for the State Department, advised the Pentagon, has been involved. We'll just look up his name and takedowns of governments all over the world, you name it, but not with armies, with psychological warfare. He's an expert in false flags. He's exposed on this broadcast 9/11 as a false flag and other events. He said that the shooting in Norway was not an inside job. I don't know his take on the new shootings, and I wanted to get him on because he said like over a year ago, he said on this show, you all heard it, that he thought Petraeus would be in the running for vice president. And I've always found Drudge and his sources, Drudge doesn't go with something when Drudge writes an article maybe once every 2 weeks or something, or his sources there in D.C., some of which I've met with, and know they don't go with something unless they've got it from the highest levels. And their word is Obama was concerned that Petraeus may be picked as the VP, that would be a strong VP pick to Mitt Romney. Petraeus just said that's not the case, but they always say that. But Dr. Steve Pieczenik, showing his inside knowledge, I was saying that a year ago here, just like he said they had bin Laden on ice and would stage his death, announce his death later as a stunt. He broke down how that was a fraud. Now they're running TV ads, have a movie coming out about it. We'll get his take on that coming up later as well. But he separately, I believe, because he's talked to the producer, I haven't talked to him yet, said he wanted to get into the shooters, which I see this as a October surprise, because I saw the pre-scripting by Homeland Security saying it isn't Al-Qaeda now, it's going to be right-wing groups. And then you have Air Force psychiatrist over him, and you have a sheep-dipped Army, Black Ops, PsyOps guy. Because half the people in white supremacist groups are feds. The feds lead them, like Hal Turner. But I don't even know Dr. Pieczenik's take on that. We'll find out here on air together. I just respect his view. He's also a best-selling author, co-wrote books with Tom Clancy as his expert, NetForce, Ops Center, you name it, trained in psychiatry. I think the only guy to have a degree at the same time. He got Harvard University in International Relations at MIT. So he's also a doctor and a PhD. His novels are based on over 20 years' experience resolving international crises and hostage situations for the Department of State for 4 administrations. So he's a super insider, and he's very humble, like most big insiders are. But he has incredible courage to come on and say 9/11's an inside job. Now I'm going to try to sit back and shut up because I am obnoxious and let him start with wherever he wants to start. The shooters, Petraeus, coming up, his recap of the bin Laden fable. Dr. Pieczenik, great to have you with us.
It's always a pleasure, Alex. I think Obama and I can agree on one thing. Bin Laden's dead. Whether I said it was going to happen 10 years later, or it happened, he's dead. So let's finish with that for a moment, and we'll lead to the other issue of false flag, which it's not in the Middle East. The Middle East war now that we have is not a false flag. It's a real war that's going on covert operations. And by the way, I will lead into the man who's leading that covert operation. He's a very brave man, and that's Petraeus. I've always had a great admiration for him since he was a major general, and I picked off his modus operandi, where he's very creative, he's very proactive. He's a man who, like many of our senior military officials, has a PhD and a master's degree. There are others, Keith Alexander, McAllister, all of whom have been trained and have other degrees beyond being warriors. And I think what's important now is to understand that Petraeus, as I said a year ago, would make a great president. I would make an excellent vice president. But quite frankly, my take is that as much as I would respect Drudge or any other report, I don't think Petraeus would come out right now. We do need him in a major war that is going on that is not a false flag, that is not a stand down, and that is the civil war that's going on in Syria, which is being handled quite quietly, and I must admit effectively, by this administration, because you have several professionals. Number one, Petraeus himself, who's running a covert operation. It's involving our own CIA and other units coming out of Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar. And then you have Iran and Russia and other elements involved in a counterforce. And what's really going on in the Middle East now, and it's interesting that neither Romney nor Obama have talked about it, is that we do have a real war going on between Sunnis and Shiites. This is not a false flag. This is not a stand-down. This is not an attempt by anybody to suppress information. It's simply that no one's talked about the substance.
But isn't it a proxy war, Doctor?
It is a proxy war. That's why General Petraeus now is important to maintaining that proxy war in terms of what it means. It doesn't mean proxy. The Saudis are funding Al-Qaeda and Salafists. Salafists are extreme Islamic fundamentalists who actually are fighting against the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and, in fact, against the Syrians. Now, my own history with Syria is that it's not been a very hopeful history, but nevertheless, I will tell you what happened. I worked against Hafiz Assad, and I was part of a team that was effective in being able to bring him to a point and position during the Lebanese Civil War.
That's right. You know him. That's on record. Tell folks about that.
Well, what happened is Hafiz Assad was continuously creating explosions and disruptions in the Middle East. When we needed some cooperation, he eventually came to terms about 20, 30 years ago under the Reagan administration. I give credit to the Secretary of State Schultz and others who were involved in bringing Syria, as well as the Israelis, brought Syria, the United States, Israel, and Syria came together and effectively agreed quietly that Syria would be in charge of Lebanon and control the PLO, PFLP, and Hezbollah. And in return, Israel would pull back and not be concerned about terrorist activities. And that was going on for 20 to 30 years up till now, where Syria has been an effective surrogate in terms of maintaining peace and order. Their only interest in Lebanon was really the banking system. It was nothing else. Now, Syria is not a democracy, nor is any other country in the Middle East, except perhaps for Israel, which is, again, quite questionable given the ultra-Orthodox status of Bibi's government at this point. But the point of fact is neither Egypt, Qatar, Dubai, Saudi Arabia are democratic institutions. They are autocratic.